Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're joining us today because, wow, we are tackling one of the absolutely most fascinating subjects in human biology. We're going to strip away all those wellness buzzwords you always hear and just dive straight into the hard biological science of how our brains and our bodies are literally inextricably linked. We are talking about tangible, physical networks here, folks. Neurotransmitters, immune cells, hormones, the whole shebang. They're constantly talking to each other like a giant group chat happening inside you right now.
To make this super easy to digest, we've broken our journey down into 5 bite-sized chunks. First, the biological two-way street. Second, how exercise remodels your brain. Third, the real runner's high. Fourth, when stress alters immunity. And finally, mastering your mind-body loop. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the biological two-way street. Time to set the foundation for exactly how this internal communication highway actually operates.
For the longest time, the phrase mind-body connection kind of sounded like something you'd only ever hear in a trendy yoga studio, right? It felt super abstract, but I want to challenge that perception right out of the gate. So is it actually real? Well, the answer is a resounding 100% yes. It is absolutely not just a metaphor, it's a literal, anatomical, and chemical reality running through your veins and your nervous system at this exact second.
The hard science behind all of this is an incredible field called psychoneuroimmunology, or thankfully PNI for short. Just look at the word itself for a second. Psycho refers to your thoughts and your emotions, neuro is your brain and your nervous system, and immunology is your body's defense system. PNI actually proves that these aren't 3 separate systems just operating in isolation. No way. They are one massive interconnected web. So your mental state can literally dictate your immune response and, get this, your immune system can directly alter your mood.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how the academic literature validates exactly the way these systems communicate. If you take a look at this biological highway, you'll see they use physical signaling molecules. We're talking about things like cytokines, cortisol, and brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. Think of these molecules as literal physical text messages sent back and forth on this network between your immune cells and your brain. So when you have a stressful thought, your brain basically hits send on a chemical message, and your immune system immediately receives it and reacts to it. It's wild.
Moving right along to Section 2, how exercise remodels your brain. We're going to look at the body-to-mind connection first and explore how physical movement actively sculpts the actual structure of your brain. To really understand the stakes here, we kind of have to look at what happens when we don't move. Research shows that sedentary adults over the age of 55 experience a 1 to 2% annual decline in the volume of their hippocampus. Now remember, that's the brain region responsible for memory and learning. To put that into perspective, your brain is literally shrinking by up to 2% every single year if you remain sedentary. I mean, those are very real, very physical, biological stakes.
But hey, here's the absolutely incredible news. Consistent aerobic exercise actually reverses this shrinkage. When you engage in sustained aerobic activity, your muscles basically act like an endocrine organ. They start releasing these neurotrophic factors like BDNF and IGF-1. Honestly, you can just think of these as miracle grow for your brain. They cross the blood-brain barrier and physically grow new gray matter. As you can see, you get prominent structural growth in the hippocampus for memory, the prefrontal cortex for cognitive control and focus, and the caudate nucleus, which helps with inhibitory control, basically your ability to resist distractions. So you aren't just getting fitter, you are literally building a bigger, better brain.
And this brilliantly illustrates the dual power of movement. On one hand, you have this fantastic short-term cognitive boost. Like a single bout of exercise improves your attention, working memory, and problem-solving skills for up to 2 solid hours post-workout. But on the other hand, if you compound that over months, you get long-term structural growth. You're transitioning from just a temporary spike in focus to permanent structural upgrades in your brain's hardware. It's a real game changer.
All right, Section 3, the real runner's high. Speaking of exercise, let's look at the specific neurochemistry of a workout and bust a very common myth about what actually causes that famous runner's high. We've all heard that endorphins cause the runner's high, right? I mean, it's practically a cliche at this point. Well, the data tells a much more complex and, frankly, a much more fascinating story. Studies actually show that just 30 minutes of intense, moderate to high exercise increases the concentration of a specific metabolite in your body by a massive 77%. But here's the kicker. It's not an endorphin. It turns out that euphoric feeling involves some incredibly potent chemicals. First up, there's anandamide, which is an endogenous cannabinoid. Yes, you heard that right. Your body literally produces its own natural version of the psychoactive compound found in cannabis, and exercise triggers its release. And second is phenylethylamine. This is a trace amine that is structurally very, very similar to amphetamine. So when you push your physical limits, your body is basically producing its own natural, completely legal cocktail of cannabinoids and stimulants. That is the true biological reality behind why a good hard run makes you feel absolutely invincible.
Okay, moving to section 4, when stress alters immunity. Let's pivot now to the mind-to-body connection. We've seen how the body changes the brain. Now let's examine how the brain acts as the master conductor of your immune system.
Let's look at this comparison to really build our understanding of stress. Because, not all stress is bad. Acute, short-term stress actually gives your immune system a temporary boost. It's your evolutionary fight-or-flight response kicking in, preparing you for a potential injury. But chronic stress? Yeah, that's a whole different story. Prolonged psychological stress has a devastating effect. It actively suppresses the production of lymphocytes and significantly reduces the effectiveness of your natural killer cells. It basically leaves you highly vulnerable to infections and chronic inflammation. So, here is the literal biological chain reaction of how a simple thought can actually make you sick. Step 1, your brain perceives a psychological stressor. Maybe it's a looming deadline at work, or maybe a financial worry. Step 2, this purely mental thought activates your HPA axis. That's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal network. Step 3, your adrenal glands start pumping out cortisol. And step 4, that chronic flood of cortisol physically binds to your immune cells and just suppresses their function. Literally, a purely psychological thought has just triggered a physical shutdown of your body's defense grid. Crazy, right?
So the absolutely crucial point here is that this loop feeds right back on itself. This brings us to what's known as the inflammatory hypothesis of depression. See, when chronic stress dysregulates your immune system, your body starts producing excess pro-inflammatory cytokines. And these inflammatory proteins, they don't just stay in your body. Nope, they actually cross the blood-brain barrier and alter the function of neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine in your brain. What this means is that inflammation in your physical body can literally cause the biological symptoms of depression and anxiety in your mind. It is a complete, closed biological loop.
Finally, Section 5, Mastering Your Mind-Body Loop. This is where we get to take back control. Let's look at how we can proactively take the wheel of this biological loop.
Because PNI is a hard, measurable science, we actually have hard, evidence-based interventions to manage it. To lower that cortisol and really boost your immune function, the literature points directly to a few key things. First, cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, which actually structurally changes how your brain perceives stress. Then there's mindfulness-based stress reduction, which has been clinically proven to decrease those pro-inflammatory cytokines we just talked about. Anti-inflammatory nutrition is huge too, because it removes chemical stressors right from your gut. And of course, consistent aerobic exercise, which flushes the brain with BDNF and just beautifully regulates the entire system. Remember, folks, these aren't just trendy wellness tips. These are literal biological interventions.
If there is just one single thing I want you to take away from this explainer today, it's this. Your biology is not static. You are definitely not just a passive passenger in your own body. Every single step you take on a run, and every single thought you manage through mindfulness is actively and physically rewriting your neurochemistry and your immune system. You literally possess incredible power over your own internal communication highway. We've seen the data today. We've traced the anatomical pathways. So I want to leave you with this one final thought. Since your thoughts literally sculpt your immune system and your physical movement literally grows new brain matter, how will you choose to rewrite your biology today? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep moving, and I'll see you next time.